Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this Squared Up Coffee Break webinar series. Today's episode is on alert management in Squared Up 3.2. My name is Matthew Long, and I'm joined today by Richard Benwell.
Afternoon, Matthew.
I've hopefully got a good episode for you today, looking at some of the new stuff we've got in 3.2, but also some age-old problems that we have to tackle with SCOM. So let's take a look at our agenda. So essentially, what we're looking at is that sort of age-old problem of monitors and rules, specifically monitors and alert rules, and how they're handled sort of in SCOM, in Squared Up, and now with 3.2 with a new sort of feature, how we handle them slightly differently there. So the first point we're going to look at basically is why it actually matters, like why does it make a difference that these two behave differently, and what are the things that we need to know that we need to educate our users about to make sure that our monitoring strategy actually aligns with how the product works. Then we're going to take a look at how we actually work with alerts in Squared Up, specifically around a couple of different features to do with closing and resetting alerts. And then finally, we're going to look at health state summaries, which is a new feature in 3.2, trying to sort of answer that classic problem of something is red, what's the actual problem here, what's the cause of that.
Great. So as usual, we'll get hands-on with the product, especially by the end of the webinar. That first topic there, Matthew, I guess is the one we're going to kick off on, which is the monitor versus rules. Most people, I guess, on this webinar or watching this webinar recording are SCOM administrators. They hopefully know the difference, maybe not necessarily knowing kind of all the ins and outs, but certainly they probably experienced some issues with it, with their user base. And so Matthew, you've sort of been there at the front line with SCOM administration. What is the typical experience of a SCOM administrator with the monitor versus rules problem?
Frustration and confusion normally. So the ultimate problem is that these manager packs will choose to implement alerting in different ways. And they have a choice between rules and monitors. And actually they serve slightly different purposes, and confusion there can often lead to a lot of problems and frustration for you as a SCOM admin. The most important thing you really have to do is tune your management packs and understand when you import an MP, what does it actually contain? Because if it's a very rule heavy management pack, alerts coming from that MP are probably not necessarily very reliable. And they will have a different strategy in terms of how you actually work them compared to a management pack that's absolutely full of monitors where you can say, if I see an alert here, this is a problem and it's ongoing now and it needs to be resolved. Because alert rules really are point-in-time notifications. They are, at this point, something happened. And I can't tell you any more than that other than this thing occurred. Now, granted, there's always exceptions, like there's a alert rule in the SQL management pack that fires every single time you try to write to a database and it's full, so you can't. That usually has a repeat count of like 32,000 in 24 minutes. So that basically functions a bit like a monitor. You can just watch the repeat count going up and know this is still an issue. But for the most part, when an alert comes up from a rule, it'll open. And let's say you're looking at the alerts open from last night. And you're looking at these alerts and thinking, well, okay, is this a problem now? Is this not a problem? Do I need to take this with a grain of salt?
So that's you as a SCOM administrator.
Yeah, and I know the difference.
Have you ever seen users get their head around this?
No, invariably
respond to alerts differently?
What tends to happen there is that they treat them all like their monitors because you've told them, hey, SCOM is this proactive monitoring tool. So they treat them all with the same behavior. So either A, they're chasing problems that don't really exist anymore, or invariably what happens is they start seeing that as a cry wolf problem, right? SCOM's always saying these problems are occurring, everything looks fine now, these alerts are just wrong, and they stop listening to it.
Yeah, or closing the alerts, assuming that it's the turning it off. They're all they need to do is close the alert and move on. Which of course
exactly. Because that's what they're seeing over and over again. Problems that were a problem last night. I'll just keep closing it, and then they miss the monitor.
All right. So I'm sure it's a familiar story to many people. We've put together a slide here trying to summarize the difference between monitors and rules. So I think it's worth going through this because then what we're going to do is take a look at how that matters in Squared Up and how we're sort of showing this differently. And I think you touched on it there, which is SCOM is really well known for the fact that it does have this stateful model of your system. So it has a health model, it has discoveries to discover all those different objects, and everyone knows about the roll-ups in SCOM. That's something you hear about a lot, which is this idea that if one component down the bottom of the tree goes red, it will sort of roll up and make the server go red or an application go red. So it's something that SCOM has at its heart, I guess, and as a lot of people want to make the most of. But of course, the other side of SCOM is the alerts, and most people think of SCOM as just alerts coming out of SCOM, email alerts, perhaps email sort of alert dashboards, but essentially managing alerts is the same as managing SCOM and the same as managing your monitoring. So we'll put a table together, I guess, to make some statements about monitor alerts and some statements about rule alerts and sort of try and clarify how they are different. So I guess we'll kind of run through these one by one and have a quick discussion. Otherwise, hopefully it's all there. We did actually look out on the internet to find if there's a Kevin Holman blog on this or a Brian Wren blog on this. Maybe there is, and let us know if you know a really good sort of table that kind of clarifies it. This was our quick effort at just putting some sort of clarification and some rules around what is a monitor and what is a rule. So on the left, so monitors, so fundamentally they're stateful, which I guess might mean a lot to some people, might sort of not mean so much to other people. A rule is non-stateful. And I guess the other rows sort of help sort of clarify what does that mean. You were just saying, Matthew, with a monitor alert, it means there is a problem. If this alert is there is still a problem. And hence you should be still sort of reacting to it as if that alert is current and the problem is current. Whereas a rule alert isn't stateful. It just indicates that something happened. It's sort of much more sort of event-based. There was a problem at that point. It might be repeating, but there is sort of a problem at a point.
And they can also indicate sometimes that there was a problem, but that doesn't necessarily infer that it's currently broken. Or could, like for example, the classic example is backups failed. The backup failed last night. Doesn't mean it'll fail tomorrow. So that's a classic rule scenario where a monitor wouldn't make sense there because, okay, it failed last night, but the backups aren't currently trying to run, so a monitor wouldn't really be appropriate.
But if you see two alerts, both are 5 days old, and there's a monitor alert, that is still a problem because it's still sitting there. If there's a rule alert that's 5 days old, it could just be something that happened 5 days ago, and you have to go and sort of understand whether it's still a problem. What we mean by stateful, I guess, as well, is affects the health state of the object. So going back to the fact that SCOM has an object model, and health attached to that object model, that's the really important thing. And from a squared up point of view, this is really important because with squared up in the picture, you're often looking at the health state of objects much more so, I think, than when you were with the SCOM console. I think you can work the SCOM console just looking at alerts, really, whereas squared up really obviously brings front and center the health state of a computer, of a group, of an application, and so on. So really understanding this does matter when you're building dashboards in SCOM. I think what we often see with our customers is they put squared up on top of their system, and suddenly it's just so obvious how much is red, and they have to get to the bottom of why these things are red. So it does really matter about sort of understanding monitors and rules. Rules don't affect the health state of the object. So essentially a rule creates an alert directly. There it goes, ping, off as an alert. A monitor changes the health state of the monitor, which then goes and creates a rule because the health state of the monitor has changed. So the sort of the ultimate sort of outcome is the same, but it's fundamentally the rule is just creating that alert without changing the health state.
And similarly, it's on the bottom of the table, but that alert kind of has a separate life span to the monitor, right? So the monitor can then, so the alert can then be closed, but the monitor doesn't listen to that. It's not necessarily two-way. The only sort of interaction you get between the two is that if a monitor upgrades or downgrades its state, so if it goes from, say, critical down to healthy, or goes from warning to critical, that alert will get updated. And its severity change is appropriate.
Okay, let's also see that in action with some of these rows. So roll up health, I think that's important. It's fairly obvious if a monitor changes the health state of an object, that then most often is rolled up, and that's why low disk space on a disk affects the health of the server, and potentially even the health of the DA if that server's in a DA or a group. Whereas a rule to say a backup failed doesn't affect the health state of the server. Changes the health state of the dashboard. That's very obvious as well, and really that's the most visible outcome of the difference between monitors and rules. The next row, they both create alerts, so that's where they are.
I hate that you have to put normally on there.
Normally, some monitors do not create alerts. That is an optional configuration for a monitor. We'll come on to that in a second, talking about sort of management pack development. The alert stays open while the issue remains. So if the alert is there, the issue is there. Actually, the rules, I think this is interesting. The repeat count, most people know about the repeat count. It has to be understood that is specific to rule alerts. So if the monitor reevaluates and finds that the issue is still there, nothing happens. There's no state change. There's no change to the alert, and the alert will still be last modified when it was created, right? It's just it's created and it's left. If a rule reruns and detects that the issue is still there, or the same thing has happened again, the same event has occurred, it actually goes off and modifies the alert and updates the repeat count. So that's your visibility that this has happened on an ongoing basis and wasn't just 5 days ago, it's 5 days ago and every night since, for example.
And also top tip, if you want to make it really easy in the SCOM console, but obviously while you're using that, you have squared up. But if you are using the SCOM console, if you want to make it really obvious which of your alerts are coming from rules versus monitors, add the repeat count column, because most rules do tend to repeat.
Yep.
So immediately you can
Yes,
see,
true.
okay,
Yep.
look, that's got 10. That must be a rule-based one. It's not foolproof because there will be some that are 0 that are still rules, but at least it can immediately give you a visual indicator.
That's a really good point. If you did have an alert view that was showing rule alerts, repeat count would be 1. Last modified would be really important because that shows how recently this event has happened. Because to be honest, hands up, if you look at just the default alert views in squared up, you would see when the alert was created 5 days ago, right? Backup failed 5 days ago, and just going back to your example there, failed 5 days ago. Is it still failing overnight?
Yeah.
It's not a stateful, it's not a monitor alert. It's sort of a rule alert with sort of this event basis. You've got no visibility there of whether that still has happened recently. So if you do create alert views for rule alerts, repeat count and probably last modified would make a lot of sense.
Yep.
And this is the big one, really, and sort of coming to obviously the demo of the product. On the monitor side, closes alert automatically. So it kind of makes sense, continuation of what we've just been talking about. If the monitor detects that the the condition has gone away, then it goes off and closes the alert. So the alert has gone. Note that it closes it automatically, right? And again, there's normally caveat. There is this, you can screw up basically if you're developing a management pack and decide to do things differently and decide that it's not going to close the alert.
The classic example,
I don't know what the use case for that is, but it is possible.
The one I usually see cited is people saying, let's say I've got a flapping port. I want to know if it's flapping, therefore don't keep closing the alert, so I have the alert open the whole time. That doesn't tend to scale very well at the kind of environment that SCOM's looking at, because you as an individual might manage, say, 20, 30 devices, and you can go there and hand close these alerts. But actually, when applied to an organization and mostly left to its own devices, that sort of strategy doesn't work out that well. So yeah, thankfully, that's one option that most MP developers don't choose to use.
Yep. On the right-hand side, the equivalent to that is it does not close the alert automatically. The alert's fired. The repeat count is updated. That's sort of how that's tied in, but it doesn't go back and after some time close the alert. And actually, we might talk about that towards the end of the webinar. How do those alerts, or do they ever get closed automatically? The rule does not close the alert automatically. So that then leads on just the last 2 rows in that table there. What do you do about monitors? Well, they can be manually reset. It has to be clear that that is not in any way fixing the problem, right? You reset the monitor. So from a SCOM point of view, it goes back to healthy. The alert is closed automatically. It should then reevaluate in the next periodic cycle, reevaluate that condition and recreate that alert if the monitor goes back healthy. If the monitor goes to critical again. On a rule, there is nothing to reset. You can't reset a rule. It's just something that is running periodically and just sort of looking for some events. And then the very last one, which is in italics, because really fundamentally this is where users go wrong, or this is where it really matters to users, is because of all those things in the monitor column, alerts should not be closed manually. There is really no very strong use case for ever closing an alert manually and saying, I don't want to know about that alert anymore, even though the underlying health state is red and your dashboards are showing red and so on.
SLAs as well.
Yeah, everything that kind of keys off the health state. On the right-hand side, well, actually rules don't get closed automatically by the rule itself. SCOM does do some kind of grooming over time, so they do go away, but effectively they should be closed manually if you don't want to see that alert if you have acknowledged it in the future. So that's a good sort of comparison. Let's now, I guess, dive into the product. Let's dive into Squared Up and see it in action. I mean, I sort of one question before we do that sort of, I finish off this discussion is you mentioned earlier about management pack development.
Yes.
So the other area that you have a lot of expertise in, and actually something we'll be talking about tomorrow in the context of a PowerShell management pack, which will be very exciting. You will, if you are creating monitoring yourself as a SCOM administrator in your environment, you have the choice between a monitor and a rule.
You do.
How would you sort of finish off this conversation with a quick kind of bit of guidance? When do you choose a monitor? When do you choose a rule?
I think for me, it really comes down to, there's 2 parts to that. One is whatever data source you're using to sort of test health. Is it a point in time source or is it an active polling source? So can you say to this like API, this command, this service you're using, whatever, are you currently healthy or are you currently degraded in some way? So a classic example is, I want to monitor a service to see if it's up or down. With a service, I can tell it's running or it's not running. So it's very easy for me to create a monitor against that. If all I actually have is, here's a list of logs that can spit out content in them. In order to create a monitor off of that, you've got to have events that get written to say that both the problem has occurred and it's gone away again. And also, you have to be really, really confident that those healthy events do
are going to be
always
raised.
show up.
Yeah.
Because if they're not, what you get is monitors that just stay red the whole time. And I would say, as frustrating as it is to have this whole rule versus monitor problem, it's far worse from a user perspective to have a monitor that just won't close. I mean, manual reset monitors are awful as well, right? Because you have this monitor, you've been told that monitors will heal when they're healthy, and actually it's a manual reset monitor, it'll only ever heal when someone resets it. So as an MP author, I would say, as long as you've got that sort of probe where you can poll and say, is this healthy or is this unhealthy, then go ahead and use a monitor. For anything else, use a rule. But really, you need to think very carefully about your use case. But is this actually something someone would really want to see? Making this actually an alert rule, is this valuable to have that there? And please make sure that you do actually configure alert suppression, because the repeat count functionality is not on by default. When you create that rule, you have to say, okay, if these fields are duplicates, then suppress the rule and create a new repeat count. And I think we've all had management packs, so we've imported that MP, the author hasn't configured any alert suppression, and the alert just keeps opening and opening and opening and opening, and you get 400 of exactly the same alert opening up. So definitely make sure you enable those too. But what I said, what it comes down to is try and do a monitor. You should really only do a rule if you can't implement a monitor off of it, because you don't have any sort of healthy state, or you can't trust that that's actually accurate. So you're forced to go for a rule.
And I mean, we were sort of talking earlier, it's hard to say what's correct and what's not correct. The only thing we are sort of sure of is that it's not consistent.
Yes.
no two management packs will take the same approach to creating monitors and rules. So unfortunately, that's where we are with sort of SCOM, and there's an element of learning and understanding the fundamentals. All right.
Sorry, one last thing. If you're writing an MP for yourself, like for your own team, talk to your team and figure out what they actually want. Like if they say, yeah, we actually would prefer to have this alerted and it's a rule, we understand that, that's fine. If you're a vendor making a management pack, maybe create both. Create a monitor, create a rule, disable them both by default, and put it in your documentation and say, if you want one of these on, turn it on.
Okay, great. Let's get stuck in with the product now. So let's look at Squared Up. You drive, I'll talk. Let's work through looking at alerts in Squared Up 3.2. So we made a number of changes. This was on the release webinar. What we'll do is recap on that a little bit, maybe hopefully go a bit deeper, and then we want to look at health state summaries to finish off. So we've been talking about monitor versus rule alerts. Let's take an example of each. So this is our alerts dashboard. Should we look at a rule one first?
So you've noticed we've changed the icons.
The icons, yeah. So actually go down to rules. I'm sorry, the warnings. That's because I think there was a warning there that we wanted to look at, wasn't there? So there's two types of warnings here. We've got these solid icons. So the memory usage there and the ops manager failed. They are stateful. They are affecting the state of the object, and that's why we went with a solid icon there, because wherever you see that object in Squared Up, it will be sort of a solid yellow square to show that the health state of that object is affected as well. That's why we went with the solid icon, and then we went with a hollow icon for rule alerts, because they are alerts, but they're not affecting the health model. They're not affecting the health state of the object model in SCOM. So we kind of went for that effect of them not being quite sort of substantial, so not sort of quite kind of hard defined as the monitor alerts. So let's take a look at that one then, Matthew. The application pool. Gosh, I mean, we have many of these in our environment. Maybe that's because we're running Squared Up 100 times over in different sort of test scenarios, but man, we see these things all the time. So application pool worker process terminated unexpectedly. I guess recapping just on that monitor versus rule and what you're saying about management pack there. Why is this a rule and not a monitor?
Well, it's because it is an event with the process terminated. It's started up again.
Yeah.
It's not affecting downtime.
So it's not saying the application pool is not running,
nope.
Right? It's just that it terminated unexpectedly, because of course application pools can stop and start regularly, right? It's not a problem. It's the fact that it happened unexpectedly. So this is an event. You can't now say, oh, it failed unexpectedly and now it's okay, right? It might have started again. And I guess it's green, which indicates that it is currently running. It's not sort of stopped. But this is an event that happened, and hence a rule based alert. So I guess the one thing to look at is we've got the icon there again, the hollow icon. So that's in the drill down. And then the hosting stack is the most obvious thing here, which is everything's green. Which I guess comes back to that table we just showed there, which is, yes, this is an alert. It has happened, but the health state has not been affected. And if you had your server on a dashboard, or if you had that server in a group or a server in a DA,
you never noticed.
You wouldn't notice. Your dashboards will still be showing green despite this happening. And actually, when did it happen? 4 hours ago. So great. Okay, so that's a rule alert in action. In terms of what we can do here, we can change the health state, presumably. So we can click on new there and
change that to a different state.
So we can close it, which is, I guess, often if you if you essentially acknowledge this, right, this is just something you want to clean up. You don't want to take any action based on this. It defaults to closed. You can put a comment in and you can hit update.
Yeah, unlikely actually. A lot of the time, these sort of rules tend to come through because of maintenance action that someone's doing. So in this case, that's probably the reason why this came up.
Cool. And we've got the rule perspective on this alert if we want to look at the sort of underlying configuration. So that's just a little bit about where the rules come from.
And okay. We can tell it's an event log immediately because it's looking at the system log.
So that makes a lot of sense. Actually, something I think has come up recently is we need repeat count there. It's not there by default. We need to make sure that repeat count, probably last modified, on the basis of this discussion, we probably make sure that's surfaced on that page. Okay, so I think that's everything we wanted to show on the rule alert. Let's take a look at a monitor alert and how that's different. Which one are we going to look at?
I'll look at CPU. It's a classic one, isn't it? Let's face it.
I'd switch over to the alert view there. So that's just our demo of how you can put a performance data on. So this looks different. It looks different because the alert icon is solid red. Obviously, it's a critical versus a warning alert. But again, the most obvious thing is the hosting stack is different.
Yep.
So this alert is affecting the health state of, in this case, the operating system object. So the Microsoft Windows Server 2012 R2 data center object that is hosted on the server. And there's a roll up there to mean that because the OS is unhealthy, the OS has high CPU, the server is unhealthy and showing as red. So we can see the roll up.
And we can see how it's affecting other applications as well.
Yep.
So on the right, you can see affected apps. So this is now having a negative impact on the sales app, on various different other apps as well.
Can we close it? So if we hit new, do we okay, high CPU, not bothered. Let's close it.
Fix the problem, it's fine.
Okay. Let's go and do that. So in 3.2, we now make that a lot harder. First of all, because it doesn't default to closed, and it also essentially gives you this information in red and says, well, okay, I understand this. So if you are a regular user at this point, you may be feeling a little bit out of your depth or maybe thinking this is the wrong way to go. You can always go ahead and close the alert. What should we do? Should we reset the alert?
I think probably let's follow the advice and actually reset the thing.
Okay, so let's reset the monitor because actually we have just gone and made a change. We've maybe gone and killed some bad process that was a runaway process that was pegging the CPU. So we've done that and then we hit reset.
I also like the fact that this text here is actually dynamic, so we do check to see if the monitor
in the edge case where it doesn't automatically close the alert.
We will tell you that. Okay. So that's quite nice. So let's reset this. And that will now start. That will reset the monitor. The monitor will then notify the alert that it's changed back to healthy health state. That will get closed. Maybe you can see.
Let's do a refresh of the page and see whether SCOM has updated the health state of the objects there. Yep, there you go. So the alert still exists. It's not open. We can still see it in the SCOM database, but it's in a closed state. So essentially, from SCOM point of view, this alert is closed. The monitor is now healthy, and hence the objects in the stack have gone green as well. I mean, reset is really when you want to force it to reevaluate the condition, or whether when you've fixed the condition and you want to sort of prompt SCOM to detect that. I mean, especially some monitors, I guess, have a cycle probably of hours rather than minutes. So you go and fix the problem. Your boss is hassling you because the dashboard is showing red. So you fix the problem and you do a reset monitor and hopefully the dashboards go green seconds later. I
think I would definitely say, like, before you hit the reset though, do go and check on the monitor tab and just have a look at that sort of timeout, at that interval, and make sure it is something meaningful.
30,
because if it is like 30 seconds, well, you know what, actually let's play it safe. Let's let it reset itself when we fix the problem. As you say, if it's like a week or 24 hours, then we'll probably reset it and have some provisions in there if it doesn't actually fix the problem.
If we go back and refresh the alert page there, is that object? It's more the alert we were just looking at. It has that's been re-raised. Look, there you go. That's what I was looking for. So that's actually now been reevaluated. Click on the alert perspective there. And so the alert's come back because the monitor's gone red and the object's gone red again. Okay.
And note that it's not the same alert. It's an instance of the same alert, but it's not actually the same alert. So if you put history or comments onto that previous alert, it won't be here because this is a brand new alert. So again, think twice about maybe closing or resetting alerts where you put a lot of information as you've been troubleshooting this problem. Let the monitor close it, because if it is still an issue, you don't want to have to go and refind all that and reassociate a ticket and everything else. Especially if you are linking your tickets into your CMDB. This has now created a brand new ticket.
Great. So now the last topic we wanted to look at is health state summaries.
Yes.
So let's take a look at that. I guess there's a lot to say here, but
so I've got a slide actually I want to cover over just to make sure we're super clear on this one, so sorry about that.
Health state summaries. Okay. Why is this object red, which is like really what it should be called? We came up with health state summaries. This is a descriptive term, but essentially it's trying to answer the question, why is the object red, or obviously yellow if it's in a warning. So yeah, we'll put some bullet points together here. So what does the health state summary show you? What is the description that appears there? So it shows the for any object that's red or yellow, so for any object that is not healthy, it shows the alert that was firstly created by a monitor, and hopefully by now that should be obvious why we only look at monitor alerts, because it's only the monitor alerts that have affected the health state. We're not trying to show other alerts on the object. So if, for example, if the object's green, we don't show anything. We don't even try to show anything because the object's green. It's only if it's red, we say, okay, it's only red because a monitor is red. We try and work out which monitor it is by looking at the monitor alerts. If there are more than one, which I think actually on the demo dashboard we have there are more than one for some object, we look for the most severe. So if your object is red, we really are looking, we're not interested in the warning alerts, right? If the object is red, we want to look at the red alerts. That's going to be of most interest to us. So if it's critical, look for a critical alert. So we look for the most severe alert. And then if there happen to be multiple critical alerts affecting this health state, then we look for the most recent, which makes sense as well. So they're the rules based on sort of what how we show a health state summary. Something we'll look at in the demo is that you will see sometimes that objects don't have a health state summary.
So it'd be red, but then not.
It'd be red, but there's no explanation of why it's red. Now, one reason for this is that health state summaries only works for objects that host things, not contain things. So a computer hosts things like disks, operating systems, databases, and so on. So we can quite easily detect that an alert or a monitor on the disk is affecting the computer health state. Health state summaries are not available for things like groups or distributed applications because they contain objects. So a group contains a computer, then of course the computer can have a problem. SCOM doesn't make it possible to very quickly, on the scale that we need to do for our dashboards, ask what particular issue is causing a group to go red. So you will still see health state summaries not appear for groups and DAs, but they will appear for things like computers, watcher nodes, network devices, anything essentially that is sort of then hosting a set of objects, and they can go red.
Okay, that makes sense. What the other case?
Yeah, so we'll look at this just in the demo very kind of quickly. What if no health state summary is shown? Well, that's actually kind of the interesting question that kind of comes back to that original table as well, which is, well, maybe the management pack developer chose not to create an alert, and we've had some customers come in and say, I've got this monitor that changes from red to green. I've deliberately disabled the alert from it, or the MP doesn't create the alert. Well, that again, maybe valid cases for that. It certainly does generally cause confusion because you have something that's red and you don't have the alert to go with it. And Squared Up is relying on those alerts to try and tell you what the reason for a red object is.
If you've got a monitor that's behaving that way, remember that you can override that functionality. So do go and turn the alerting back on again so that you can actually see that.
The second reason, which is probably more likely, which is maybe a user closed the alert, tut. Again, that's what we see all the time, and that is an issue that's very sort of prevalent in SCOM deployments, which is users just treat both rule and monitor alerts equally because it's just an alert at the end of the day, so they just close the thing. So that's the most likely reason I think that you'll see a server, for example, without an alert. And then the last one we actually added to the list because when we were looking at our own environment, we were seeing some objects without alerts. So where have they gone? Who's to blame? Trying to track down who's to blame. And actually we sort of realized that the system closed the alert. So if we have time, we'll just unearth a little bit of sort of more kind of obscure SCOM functionality there, which of course is well documented by the sort of the usual characters, but something that I think probably you have enabled in most environments and probably don't necessarily realize that it is enabled or what the effect is. So we'll come and look at some SCOM settings there that maybe where SCOM is closing these alerts in the background.
Okay, back to product.
Back to product. So we're just going to take that top line there, the online critical servers. So these servers are switched on. They're sort of the agents are communicating, but they're in a red state. We have a number that have the health state summary as it should look. So should we look at SQL 04 quickly because that's the one we were looking at before. So SQL 04 is red. Why is it red? it has high CPU, and we can drill down into that.
As you would normally expect.
As you normally see, you can see the alert there in the alert list straight away, and it's the solid one. So it's the solid red one, so that's clearly affecting the health state.
Yep. Then you have some ancillary problems that may be not related.
You can drill down into that. If you need to find out which object is red, you can switch to the monitored entity tab, which gives you the sort of raw SCOM health view. So you scroll down there, you see that the operating system object is red, and again,
you can see it there too.
Yeah, has the reason. So let's close that alert, because we didn't do that in the last demo.
We've got one here that's the same. Okay.
Well, let's just see what happens, and we can see that explicitly. So if we close that alert, which we shouldn't do, so we're warned that we shouldn't do it.
Should put like Richard maybe do it there, shouldn't
I? That alert. So actually, now we come back up to that dashboard. Has that server gone green? Like, how does it look?
Well, it's still going to be red.
It's still going to be red because we haven't done anything with the monitor. We've just lost the health state summary there because there is no alert showing us why that server is red. And then to troubleshoot that, if you do see that, you can drill down into it and try and sort of work out. We don't have this by default, so this is probably something we should again sort of kind of look at in a few sort of future version or future update of a dashboard pack. But ideally, you want to see not just open alerts, but recently closed alerts and find out who closed them.
Yep.
Can we do that quickly? Do you want to just kind of create a...
Yeah, sure. Let's go back here and create a new tab for this.
So just as a demo perspective, sort of a alert, well, whatever you want to call it, recent.
I'll do.
So this,
Nice big alert tile. So close. Days. That should be the trick. So filters here. We want
the monitor only.
Yep.
Click on, that's it.
There we go. Next.
And closed.
Yep, 30 days.
And then can we add in the column? Can we add in who closed it? Come on, we need blame here. Last modified by user, is it? Last modified by, that's it.
That should be the trick.
There you go. There you are, Matthew.
Ah, damn it!
Blame.
But you forced me.
So there you go. I guess that's what we, that's what you can do in your environment if you need to get on top of this. Hopefully with the changes in 3.2, this happens less often.
No, it's much harder to do that.
Yeah, you kind of now sort of see that. What you will see is system. So this is where system is closed. Why is system closing a monitor alert at that point? At that point, because the monitor's gone green. In some cases, there'll be other reasons for the system closing. So hopefully that clarifies the health state summaries. Let's have a quick look at groups just to confirm there that when you have a group view, because the alerts themselves are not on the group and they're not anything hosted on the group, the alerts are on something that's contained within the group. We can't surface that. We've got sort of 100 groups here. We can't search through every single object contained in that group and then sort of surface the health state summary. So when you look at groups and DAs, you won't see the health state summary.
Right, and even if we could, it would be somewhat meaningless anyway, because you'd have a value that's constantly changing. All Windows computers, that alert will be different every single time you click on this.
True. Yeah.
So, but here I can always click into it and then go to the group members, and now I can actually see, and you see I've got quite a few actually that got closed alerts against them. So that was one example of a missing alert. What about SQL 03?
Oh, you tell me.
Okay, so here's the interesting one of SQL 03. If I go to SQL 03 and go to my lovely recently closed draft, there aren't any. And the reason that has happened is because the alert has been closed and groomed out of the Operations Manager database. So that has occurred because of a lovely retention setting inside SCOM. So if I go on database grooming, I want to show you this first. When alerts get closed, as they will do, by default, 7 days after that point, they're groomed out of the ops DB. So when you did a warehouse, and you can still report against them there. So perhaps if you wanted to show off long-term alerting, then you could use our SQL tile, point it to warehouse and run a query to get those alerts back. But otherwise, they're gone from SCOM. So there are squared up views. The SCOM console itself will no longer show that alert 7 days after it's been closed. And then what you also have under alerts is you have a automatic alert resolution tab, which I don't think necessarily everyone knows exists. And what it says on the screen there is after a period of time, active alerts, which are no longer relevant, can be automatically resolved. Can they now? Once an alert is in a resolved state, the alert can be groomed out of the Operations Manager database. Basically, what SCOM's going to say here is if after 30 days you haven't resolved the alert, I'm just going to close it anyway.
Even if it's a monitor alert.
Even if it's a monitor alert.
So your object's still red, the problem's still there, the alert goes away.
Yeah.
So you've got SCOM doing that sort of tut-tut closing of monitor alerts in the background for you after 30 days.
Right.
Yep.
So in this case here, that alert is potentially older than 30 days. it's been groomed, it's been set to close automatically. Then 7 days later, it's groomed out the database, or depending what your grooming settings were, if you've upped or lowered that. Some places do drop.
So in 37 days, it's disappeared completely, but the monitor is still unhealthy and the issue's still there.
Now, of course, bad SCOM, but also bad user for having an alert open
30
for 37 days.
Yep.
Yeah. So if this is a thing you're looking at and thinking, oh God, I don't want that to happen, for a start, you can obviously up that value. That will just leave it open. That will have an impact on your SCOM database size if you're not fixing things. So bear that in mind. This is supposed to be a mechanism to try and groom things out. The other thing that's worth noting is that you may think, oh, hang on a minute, that's not right actually, because I've seen alerts that have been open for 130 days. That value is calculated on the last modified time. And as you said earlier, when an alert rule repeat counts, its modified time is changed because every time it repeat counts, it's updated. So actually, you will see some alerts open for hundreds of days, but those are invariably going to be rules that are constantly being updated with a very high repeat count. I can actually show you this very, very quickly here in our environment. I just add on the repeat counts. Checkbox. Here we go. And so, there you go. 116 days.
Yep.
That's been open for. The reason is because it's repeated 98,000 times. So that's a good example there where actually that's definitely a rule because it's open for so long. A monitor would never get to that stage. It would get to 31 days and then boop, it'd be gone.
Yeah, interesting.
And you can see that, in fact, if you look at these here, funnily enough, these are all rules.
Great. All right. Very good. So we're sort of digging into the depths of how SCOM's doing alert management on those settings there. So we found some great resources by
Kevin Holman,
Tim McFadden, and Marnix Wolf. So we will put those blog links on the recording on YouTube below the recording. So check those out below.
Definitely
the recording.
worth reading it through. Yeah.
Or as always, there are thankfully some other people out there that really sort of dug into. I think on Kevin Holman's, he's basically shown the the stored procedure code that actually does this, right? So it actually is showing the code inside SCOM that is actually doing this. So kind of definitive proof there. So really excellent stuff.
Yep. So remember, either way, how it gets closed, if you want to find the monitoring question that's causing this to go red without an associated alert, just go to monitored entity, scroll down and find the appropriate object, and just keep drilling down until eventually you get to the monitor. So here, okay, it's this OS object. Go to this one, and on monitored entity, there's the monitoring question. And now I can reset that to get my alert back. And you can see, look, that was 19 days ago. So this is an example where someone's closed it.
Okay, so you can hit reset there, and we should get the alert back.
Yep.
All right. Thank you very much, Matthew. Should we call it a day on this topic?
Yeah, absolutely. Right, let's head over to our resources. Okay, so let us know what you'd like to cover on this. Hopefully this episode's been useful to you. If it hasn't been, or if it has, but you've got a great idea for a topic, go to squareup.com/topics and you can suggest future coffee break episode ideas there. We do take this feedback seriously. We've done a number of episodes now based on the feedback from you guys. So make sure you go and cast your vote there if you haven't done so already. There's also a microsite on our website as well, where you can go and see what's coming up next. There's also a registration form there. So if you've got a colleague or a friend who you think, actually, yeah, they'd really like this content, go and get them to fill in their details and they'll get signed up for the webinar automatically.
Interrupt you there, Matthew. So in terms of next week's coffee break, we're going to look at application monitoring again. Some feedback based on the topics and the information we kind of get from our customers. We do a lot of demos where we show Vader and we discover out an application. And then we sort of magically switch to a completed set of dashboards where we sort of show off perspectives against the DAs and surfacing the health of that application on a Visio dashboard. And we've had a few questions, which is like, what is that magic that happens in between?
Vendor magic.
Yeah, modeling the Vader app and then surfacing on dashboard. So we are going to have a look at a bit of that magic. Unfortunately, it's not so much magic as SCOM console, drudgery. So we're going to be firing up the SCOM console next week.
Trying to remember how to use it.
And looking at those DAs and what we need to do to really sort of surface the availability information, for example, to dashboard. So we'll be looking at that in more depth. And of course, tomorrow, more excitingly, we have a PowerShell management pack webinar. So I guess Matthew will be on that again tomorrow.
Yep.
Very, very exciting. If you haven't signed up for that yet, go do that right now. Go to our events page and sign up for the PowerShell management pack. So lots of great stuff coming up.
Oh yeah, it should be a corker. Okay, so speaking of good content coming up, so if you go to our squareup.com/blog, all the recordings and slides are published there for this coffee break, along with everything else we do. So it's definitely worth checking out if you haven't seen that before. I guarantee you'll find some good stuff to read and some good resources to get hold of. And also we have a YouTube playlist for this series as well. So again, we've referenced previous coffee breaks in this episode. So go back and check those out. You can just sit there, throw your headphones on, let the playlist play, and all the goodness come in straight into your ears. Now, as always, we're live on this webinar. So if you have questions on this topic or on anything else we've covered, our engineering team, as well as myself and Richard, are online, and we're happy to answer questions. If you don't, thank you for joining us, guys, and have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.